because you all hear me well, I'm sure. I just bought this camera, and it's very important for me because no matter how many of you are here right now, thank God and thank to modern technology and internet, everybody can see us and hear us all over the world. And there was a friend of mine, Serbian, who used to live in Germany for many years. He was not some extreme churchgoer. He was, if somebody would ask him on the street what faith you are, what religion do you practice, he would say, yeah, I'm also a Christian, like many of us. But actually he was not really active. And since we just call ourselves Orthodox Christians and we are not active in it, that means that we do not gather the all the benefit that comes from our Orthodox Christianity, from our faith, which is the only one that really comes back to the roots of the Christianity, which means that we have this salt that came on the earth with our God Jesus Christ, Son of God, and that He gave this salt to the apostles and then to holy martyrs. And by the blood of the holy martyrs, the church was built all over. And no matter how many of those first Christians were killed and slaughtered and tortured, and their joints were severed, but they actually every drop of their blood was the seed of the new church. And it's not just like that on the altar table we are putting a small piece of holy relics of those giants of faith. So in first 3 centuries before the Christianity became a regular official church of the Roman Empire, first Christians were living being aware that they could be killed and they could be slaughtered every day or every night. So during that kind of life condition, they were completely with the Lord, in their hearts, in their minds, in their mouth. And so when you are in this way close to the Lord, He is close to you. And not only close to you, but He is in you. He dwells in you. And like Holy Apostle Paul says, it's not me that lives anymore, but Christ who lives in myself. And so in those first 3 centuries, they could really be called, they could have really been called holies, saints. And we know when we read the epistles of the Holy Apostles, especially Apostle Paul, he says, when he greets some of them, and he says, and say hello, greet all those saints, holies. I'm not sure how I can say this in English, but they say, pozdravite sve svete. Say hello to all those who are holy. And what does it mean? It means that they were carrying the Holy Spirit, so they were holy. And it's a question: are we carrying? Are we holders of the Holy Spirit? And are we holy, or we are just nominally? We're just Christians by name. And this friend of mine, Mitja Babic, he used to live in Germany, in Munich. He was nominal Christian. He went to church for Christmas and Easter. And he was celebrating Slava. This is only Serbian way of only Serbian church had this Slava Some churches are kind of surprised. What does it mean, slava? You are cutting a bread, and especially Greeks who are very serious with the religion and faith, and they are protectors of the Orthodoxy. We have to admit this. They were sometimes even scandalized. What do they? These Serbs, what are they doing? They have this slava, and they are. Как се каже, принети. Offering, yeah, they're offering this bread, but we have already offered a bread on the Holy Eucharist. Why is that? And very, very, very often I was thinking about this slava. Why not any other Orthodox Christian church does this? But then I realized, why is this? Because the Serbian people is pretty wild people, pretty undisciplined and very, very free in their mind. But sometimes they can go into the, a little bit further of the red line, So this slava helped us to put us together, to hold us to the church. And of course, sometimes it's not good. Sometimes, slava becomes more important than liturgy, which is extremely wrong. So Micho Babić was one of them. Nice, good man, he was not a criminal, he was not whatever, but he was not a churchgoer. And once happened that he had some problems with his stomach, actually abdomen. He went to the doctor. He had some blood in the toilet bowl. So he went to the doctor and they said, "Sir, you have a cancer." Как се каже дебело црево? Colon, yeah, colon, of course. And sure, like everybody else, he was struck by this information, and whole of his life turned upside down. And as it usually happens in these moments, he started to think about his life, to think where he was, what was he doing, what happened, what to do now. And he went to surgery. They cut off one part of colon. So he was fine for a while, but then, as it usually goes, they found on his liver the metastasis, how do you call it? Yeah. And that was another shock, because he thought he's not healed, he's well. Unfortunately, in the world that we live, which is extremely poisoned and contaminated, today cancer is something common, usual, unfortunately, especially in our country, which was bombed by this uranium. Now we have extremely high number of parents that they cannot have children, they are barren, and we have extreme high number of cancers, much more than in the rest of the world. And he had a small daughter, so the whole thing was tragic. And there was a friend of his back in Bosnia, from the same town, and he was watching some monk, Arsenia, and his lectures, and he found something in those lectures, and he realized that this monk speaks in another style than many other members of the church. He is very open, he's very honest, he very often opens up his life, his youth, and talks very honestly about his sins, about sex and drugs and rock and roll that he used to live, first in Belgrade, then in New York City. And since he knew that his friend Micha Babic from Munich got very sick, he called him and he said, well, try to listen to this monk. Maybe you can find some benefit out of there. And so he really obeyed. I mean, he did what his friend suggested him. So he started to listen to lectures of this monk Arsenian. And a very strange thing happened. During those sessions, he started to feel better. He didn't know how. In the beginning, he thought it's maybe autosuggestion, some kind of euphoria. But then he definitely started to feel better and better, and he went to new screening, and they told them in the hospital in Munich, sir, what did you do? I mean, how do you live? What happened with you? I mean, your liver. He had 23 little spots in his liver that they are enlarging every day. But happened that those spots were reducing their size, and not only size but in number as well. And since it doesn't really happen very often, they started to ask him, what do you do, what do you do, what do you do? And he said, what? I mean, I'm not doing nothing, I'm just using the therapy, And they said, yeah, but there might be something else, everybody else is using this therapy, but nothing happens. And then, of course, he knew what was going on, in a way, and then he became more aware what's going on. So he started to listen more to those lectures, and the grace of the Holy Spirit, God's grace, came upon him, and he was really filled with grace. And wondrously, he started to get better and better. So when he realized, he asked his friend to give him my number, because that was me, this monk Arsenian. So he called me and he said, I have to meet you, I have to talk to you. And at that time I used to live in a monastery called Ostrog in Montenegro, which is famous for many healings, especially for mental diseases, but as well for bodily problems. And we came in touch, and he told me I have to come and I have to touch you. I said, no. If you want to come and touch me, don't come. But if you want to come and touch the holy relics of St. Basil of Ostrog, please do it. He said, yeah, that's what I mean. I said, okay, but be precise. So he came, we met, and he told me already at that moment he was only with 4 these cancer spots on his liver. Only 4 and very small, from 23 to 4. And so we started to talk, and he told me, I have never been more joyous in my life. He was saying, this is such a joyful part of my life that this is a little bit insane. I mean, I'm sick of cancer, and I'm in such a high degree of joy. Father, please tell me, what is this? Am I going crazy? Or this is something more deeper than that? And I told him, my brother Micha, that means that you're really in the embraced, you're embraced, you're on the bosom, how do you say bosom of the very Lord. And that it means that somehow he had decided to help you and to heal you. So, and from that moment on, he started to go into certain kind of delusion. I was trying all the time to tell him not to go this way, not to go this way, not to think this way. He started to idolize myself. He started to think that I'm holy or something. That this power comes from me. And from that very moment I realized that he's in great danger. Because he switched the topic of the whole thing. And I was telling him, remember, if you ever say once again that comes from me, forget about me. Never come to see me again, don't talk to me. Do whatever you want. I'm telling you, it's not coming from me, it's from the Lord. Okay, I'm talking about the Holy Spirit, I'm talking about the grace, I'm talking about life, God, Jesus Christ, Christianity, everything. And that's why, through these words, through this monitor of your computer, you were touched like this, and you felt the most powerful power of the Holy Spirit. But remember, it comes from the Lord, not from me. I'm just a medium. I'm just, like in Old Testament, we know that the Lord would open the jaws of the donkey. So I'm in this case, I'm just a donkey that can talk about Lord, because Lord can open mouth and to the lion and to anybody. He said, okay, yeah, I know, but somewhere. So he went back home and he called me back a month after that, and he said, Father, guess what happened? He went back to this hospital and they screened him. I mean, he came to this electromagnetic resonance, I would call this in English. Yeah. And he was clean. No cancer anymore. No any spot. And all those doctors were absolutely astonished. They didn't know what's going on. So they called him, there was a consilium of the doctors, and they were asking, what did he do? I mean, in terms of, in order to help others. And he was saying, nothing. I was just listening to certain sermons of a certain monk from Serbia. And, let's say I started to pray and to go to the church. And they said, okay, don't tell me, don't give me that, but tell me really what were you doing. So he realized that they cannot grasp it, they cannot just realize what was here. So he quit going to the hospital, and we were in contact. He was coming back again, and of course I gave him prayer rule, which was, I told him, now Lord healed you. Now you're a healthy man. Everybody is astonished, but I'm not. I know what happened. But now you have to be extremely cautious. What are you going to do in future? First of all, you have to give gratitude, thankfulness to the Lord. How? It's not abstract notion. You have to do it actively. First of all, you have to go through liturgical cycles, which consists of 4 points: confession, fasting, liturgy every Sunday, and taking communion, as often as priest gives you the blessing. On the other side, on the other hand, there is it's like a two wings. Bird cannot fly with one wing, with 2 wings. One wing is liturgical cycles, another wing is Holy Saint Gregory of the Palamas was saying, and another wing, also important, private prayer rule. And the most important part of that private prayer rule is mental prayer, called the Jesus prayer. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. It's for everybody. Holy Gregory of the Palamas was saying, it's not only for monks, it's for everybody. Okay, monks are doing this more, but it's for every civilian, for every layman. I told him that, and I gave him a prayer rule, which was not small. It was, let's say, 45 minutes in the morning, a little bit more than in the evening, but it was not too big as well, because in the world that we live, extremely full of sin and evil, it's nothing. We need more. When somebody tells you, oh, you don't have to pray that much, just say our Father, that's enough. It's not enough. We are all sick. We live in a sick world. we need a lot of remedies. And the only true remedy is liturgy and prayer at home. And this prayer rule that I give usually consists of metanoias, prostrations. First we do prostrations. I don't give too much prostrations. Between 5 and 10. There are people who are doing 200, 300. Monks on Holy Mountain do usually 300 prostrations a day. Of course, who can. Alders and sick not. Then there are morning prayers from prayer book, Orthodox Christian prayer book. Then 2 chapters from the New Testament, and 100 knots on the prayer rope of Jesus' prayer. Altogether, it depends how fast do we read, but it's not point that we read fast to finish it as soon as possible. But just simply somebody reads slower, somebody reads faster. Then it all takes about 45 minutes, 50 minutes. In the evening, very similar. 5 to 10 prostrations, evening prayers, 1 katisma, which means, I don't know in English how it's called, katisma, I believe. Yeah, it's 1 chapter. Let's imagine that David's Psalms are divided on 20 chapters, and in Greek, this chapter is called katisma. So 1 katisma consists of 7 or 8 psalms, and then again 100 Jesus prayers. And he said, "Oh, beautifully, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do it." Then once I went to Munich to give a presentation, and I went to his room and I saw that when he's little, there was his little, let's call it iconostasis with prayer book and the Holy Gospel. It was there, but it looks like it's like a ornament that he never touches it. And of course, I notice this. I notice these things. I see when the prayer rope is greasy. I see when the prayer book is greasy and it's not that bright, brand new, you know. That means that you are practicing, you're using it, you're touching it. It's part of your being. And I didn't like that. I said, do you do your prayer? Oh yeah, I do. Do you go to the church? Oh yeah, I go to church. Do you take communion? Yeah, whenever I can. Then he came back again to Ostrog, and I went to his room and I saw only a prayer book. I said, "Where's your Psalter? Where's your New Testament?" "Oh, I forgot it at home." I said, "What are you talking about? I mean, how come you can forget this? I mean, it's like you forget to eat or you forget your toothbrush. I mean, it should be part of you." "Well, yeah, I know. Forgive me." I said, "I don't have to forgive you anything. I mean, let's God forgive you." Unfortunately, things were going the wrong way. He didn't listen to me. He didn't obey me. Then there was a Lenten period, I don't remember which one. I think St. Peter, St. Paul. He went to Serbia. We talked again. He said, "Well, I couldn't keep the fast. You know, my aunt, she was cooking with meat." I said, "What are you talking about? My aunt was cooking with meat. What does it mean?" Finally, he called me. Yeah, there was also a Serbian doctor who is also living in Munich, and he was his parallel doctor. He was also going to him, and they were all astonished, as I said in the beginning, because he became completely sound and healthy. And so they, first of all, the people from the regular hospital, Germans, they said, "We have to know what we're doing." And then this doctor as well, he said, "We have to write a book or something. We have to record this. It is a miracle." And at that time, I had a little TV show, a video show in Monastery of Ostrog. We had a small TV studio, and he said, "I would really like to participated in one of your shows. It was like a regular interview, like a host and guest. And I said, okay, but why hurry? You know? I mean, why I should be hurry? Let's wait for a while. And his doctor was, no, it's beautiful, it's a miracle. Let's do it. I said, okay, let's do it. You know, I mean, because really all the results were absolutely clean. So we did this. It was very, very good, very good. It went all over the world, and I had many calls after that. Oh, beautiful, great! It was so powerful. Really, somebody that got healed, you know, just from prayer. And then what happened? One day he was calling me. I was at that time. It was summer, and I went to retreat to my hermitage, because before Monastery Vostok, I used to live for 5 years in the hermitage in Kelia, up in the mountains. It's just it's a very triangle of Serbia, Montenegro, and Kosovo. Although it used to be all Serbia, but unfortunately it's not anymore. It's a Serbian country, Serbian land, Serbian people, but it's another story. And there I used to live for 5 years, and I got sick. I couldn't stay there anymore. But I used to go there every summer for a month to recover and to charge spiritual power, to go back to Oslo and to work with people, because I had a blessing. Although I'm not ordained, I'm not a monk priest. I'm just a single monk. But the bishop, the metropolitan, he gave me a blessing to receive people, and of course not to confess them regularly with the Helium, but to talk to them and to help them, you know, in life. And they call this their life coach. That summer I went, as usual, up there, but I had to have my phone on. Mitchell Babic called me. He said, Father Senate, this is Mitchell. I said, oh, Mitchell, nice to hear you. Usually I wouldn't answer to anybody else, but to him I really had to, because the whole thing was so intense. And he started to cry, to weep bitterly. I said, what's going on? He said, oh, Father came back to me. I said, how come? What happened? It was just a few weeks ago. I mean, not a few months, but a month ago that... And he said, no, it came back. Liver has, again, about 5. Как скажи, žarište? Kako bi to rekao? Hot spots. Hot spots, yes. I said, but... And I already felt in myself that something was wrong. I said, yeah, but how did you live? And he said, Father, I have to admit, I have to confess. I lied to you all those months. I didn't do anything that you suggested to me. I didn't pray. I didn't go to liturgy. In 6 months, he took only one communion, and it was some big feast. I didn't fast, and I deserved it. I said, oh, you dumb head. I was so embittered and so disappointed and so struck and so sad. And he said, but why you didn't listen to me? Why you didn't listen to the Lord? You disappointed Lord, and you see what happened to you. And he said, yeah, what can I do? But now again I have to go to the chemotherapy, and I have to the x-rays, and then no. I said, no, not anymore. Now I have to give complete sacrifice. You have to, this is your last chance. Don't go to doctors anymore. You saw what Lord did to you. Everything is possible. Don't go to chemotherapy anymore. Don't go to x-ray. Stay at home, at your home now. You have to absolutely obey my rule, go to the church. But he was not strong enough. He went to chemotherapy, and of course chemotherapy kills. It's just dying even more in absolutely exhausted state of health. So he didn't listen to me, and he was getting weaker and weaker and weaker, and more pain and more everything that goes together with cancer. And I was really, it was one of the worst parts of my life, especially because we did this video show, and I was regretting why didn't we wait a little bit? It was made in rush, and so I didn't call him for a while. He didn't call me. I just didn't know what to tell him anymore. I was extremely sad. But then one day he called me and he said, "You know, Father, I didn't sleep for 1 month. I lost 25 kilos. But you know what? Finally, I obeyed you." Poslušao sam te kako bi se rekao. Yeah. And you know what? I'm not crying anymore. I'm not desperate anymore. Now I'm healed. Now I'm finally healed in my life. Of course, I'm healed spiritually, but I'm dying. I know that, and I'm not afraid. And I'm not crying for this world, and I'm not crying for my child, or for blue sky, or for anything, because I'm happy. Finally, for the first time in my life, I feel happiness. I feel joy. I feel deep meaning of my life, because thank you. You helped me to become healthy and sound and healed, but spiritually. My spirit and my soul finally got healed. But I'm dying. No big deal. And as much as this previous period was tragic to me, this one was like maybe one of the best periods in my life. Because I realized that I helped a man. I helped a soul to find salvation. Through me, who are nothing, God helped one person. And he died. He died. And but it was joyful repose. And so this is the story of Mitch Babic, one part of my life. And when I was a young man back in Serbia, ex-Yugoslavia, I was living like many other young people. Although not like many of them, but some of them who are really extreme in this religion of this world, which is called sex and drugs and rock and roll. We were contaminated with Western style of life because Yugoslavia was open, it was soft communism. We could get in contact with all these rock bands and way of life. And we were longing, and we were so sad that we were not born in England or in America or France. We were so deeply unsatisfied and unhappy. And of course, we were waiting to get old enough and just to fly away. In the meantime, we were growing up, we were gifted for music, we were starting to make our rock bands. We were talented for music, for poems, for scenery, for art, for everything, for theater. So it was a circle of young people in Belgrade who were avant-garde in a way. But since we didn't have orthodoxy, since we didn't have original Christianity, as a matter of fact, we didn't have any Christianity. Although there was some Roman Catholicism, but it was just deteriorated Christianity, unfortunately. we oriented our minds and our young hearts. Of course, a man needs consolation. And since he doesn't have real, proper consolation, he turns towards wrong, false consolations. And since the end of 19th century, the beginning of 20th century, the Far East religions and philosophy came to Europe. Basically, finally, when the Europeans, Western Europeans, kicked out Jesus out of Western Europe, and since they couldn't live with the spiritual fulfillment, they turned towards Far East meditation, yoga, Zen Buddhism, things like this. Well, I was one of them. Because from the very beginning I was thinking there must be something. Of course, drugs were there regularly. Thank God, not heavy drugs. I mean, not deadly drugs. Because marijuana, at that time we didn't have cannabis, we had only hashish. So cannabis is a heavy drug. So it's extreme lie when they say today it's a light drug. No, it's an extremely heavy drug. A light drug is coffee, which means coffee, green and black tea. And that South American tea which is called mate. This is light drug. Heavy drug is cannabis, hash of course. And deadly drugs are cocaine and heroin. So I'm not going to talk about all this variety of drugs that came these days and this craziness that I'm going to go in. But so we were taking these drugs, and but I was always thinking there must be something else to make me happy, to make me fulfilled, except drugs. So I realized maybe maybe yoga, meditation. You know, you sit there, you repeat your mantra, and you go to astral projection, you go to the stars, and you reach nirvana, and blah, blah, blah. So I was practicing transcendental meditation, TM. John Lennon brought it here with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi in 67, I believe. Our beloved Beatles, you know. So slowly with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, TM came to Europe and started to contaminate it. Extremely bad way. And practicing TM is extremely dangerous. It's you're losing your personality. Depersonalization. You are going to the non-being. The Lord brought us from non-being into being. And the whole of Far East actually wants to go back to the non-being. I understand them in a way, because as any other members of humanity on this planet, they realize that the human being is suffering in this life. But unfortunately, they didn't realize that there is a Father, there is a creator of this universe, who is personality, who is not energy, unified fields or whatever. It's a personality. It's emotional, omnipotent personality. Good. That wants only good for us. Unfortunately, they didn't know that. So the only way what to do is to go to escape this world, this life, this personality, and to extinguish your mind, your thinking, your everything. And even love is not productive for them, because it brings you back to the being. They have compassion for the created world, but they do not have love. Because love for them is counterproductive. So they do not have love. They're lying if they say they love. They're not lying. Today there is a soft Buddhism, which is saying, oh, you sit there, you're no, real Buddhism is actually killing. It's a spiritual suicide, but complete one. going back into the non-being. Unfortunately, you cannot go to non-being, you go to hell. So I was practicing TM for 7.5 years, and I was sinking deeper and deeper into the passions, especially into the sexual passion, lust. Whenever I would practice, I had an extreme need for masturbation, or to go to find somebody to have sex. In the beginning, it was not like that. In the beginning, it was all beautiful, nirvana, everything was so cool, everything was so serene. But then, as the years were going by, I realized that I was sinking deep into drugs and into sex, into this fornication. I lost a big part of my English, but I believe you understand me. And so we have decided this terrible war that happened in ex-Yugoslavia was approaching. Everybody who had just a little bit of brains, he could realize that something like this would happen. We had enough brains to realize that it's all going to go to hell. Everything is going to burn. So we all decided to flee, to leave the boat who is sinking like rats. Now I'm thinking maybe I should have stayed and fight. Maybe I was a deserter, maybe I was a coward. Or I was just a young man without any meaning of life. To protect, maybe to be killed. But to stay there, I was not. I didn't. Anyway, so we all flew away from Yugoslavia. One part of our company, which was big, I'm talking about basically about Belgrade. One part went to United States, and another half went to Europe, mostly London, Paris, Berlin, Barcelona, something like this. And another part, which I was part of, we went to East and West Coast, United States of America. Since I was as a young man, when I was 19, for the first time in my life, I went to America because I was fascinated with America. Like a little stupid kid, imagining this American dream. Actually, it turned out to be American nightmare. But in those years, I couldn't realize that. So I went there for the second time with a best friend of mine called Dusan. His nickname was Gera. 1980. The very next year, we went together. I was telling him how I was in New York. Because I went to San Francisco. I said, "Oh, I have to go with you," because we were very close. He was extremely good artist. He was a painter. He was extremely good. He could draw whatever he sees. He was extremely talented person. So we went to New York again, 1980, and then we have decided to go together again, 1987, and it was for good. I finished my university. I studied dentistry. He studied interior architecture. So we went to New York, and we continued to take drugs. Unfortunately, my friend Gera was already hooked on heroin. Not with needle, but same garbage, sniffing. I was extremely unhappy because of that. I was extremely unhappy because I was smoking cannabis. I realized that I'm already hooked on it. I cannot be without it anymore. I cannot stop meditating as well. And in the beginning, it was really a divine feeling when I smoke pot. When I smoke cannabis, I would go to. But then, as years goes by, then it becomes just paranoia. You have to smoke. You cannot be without not stoned. But when you get stoned, then you get paranoid. You get paranoid. Everybody's against you. You feel fear. You feel terrible. there is a police, there is this, that one, this one. Everybody's against me. So, and sometimes it goes to psychosis. It's really terrible. So I was unhappy because of me, and extremely because I was unhappy because of him. And so we were slowly dying spiritually. And he was dying as well as physically. Myself not. But it's much easier and much better to die physically than spiritually. And this whole circle of our friends were extremely talented persons. They were musicians, painters, artists, actors, doctors, engineers. We were all dying out of hunger for Holy Spirit, out of hunger for living God. We used to have every literature from all over the world, every religion, every philosophy, every spiritual practice. The bookstores were extremely well equipped with non-Orthodox Christianity. And, accidental or not, but nothing was accidental in life, I came across with a person, young man, my age, in New York City, in one big party. There was a big party, or party, I would say. There was an Irishman came to Večer and he told me, where did you get that Yankee accent? It was good to me, I had a Yankee accent. And this young man was, in those years, for me, straight person. Straight. He wasn't cool, he wasn't in, he wasn't freak. But some special light was around his head. Something was so nice and beautiful around him. And then, these were the last months of my existence in this life. I was already thinking about suicide. We acquainted. We became friends. And to make this story short, we had to go home. He introduced me to Orthodox Christianity. I was baptized as a kid, but nothing else. And I started to practice. He gave me some books, and I said, okay, I have nothing to lose. I can kill myself anytime, any day. And it was my option. I said to myself, nobody asked me if I want to come into this being. Nobody asked me if I want to be born. I do not feel well here. This life is terrible. There is no love, there is no friendship. You're only good if you can be used, materially, physically, or spiritually. No love, no real friendship. I refuse to live in this world. So I had this right to kill myself. So I said, okay, let's try this Orthodox Christianity, although it comes from my homeland, but it was always like something without any meaning, I was never against church. I never mock priests, but I was just feeling sorry for them because there is no God. I mean, they're just wasting their lives. Their profession is in vain. But I said, okay, because I had this very great respect toward this young man, because I felt in him something that I really needed. I couldn't distinguish what was that. So he told me, he gave me some books, and I started to pray. And everything changed. The heavens opened. My Heavenly Mother, I dare to call Jesus Christ even my Heavenly Mother, and my Heavenly Father, and my Heavenly Bride, and my Heavenly Friend, and my Heavenly everything. He opened the heavens, and he came to me, he said, here I am, waiting for you. I was 29 years old. I'm waiting for you all those years. I'm not envying you. Thank God you came to me. So he started to heal my soul, and it was the most beautiful part of my life. I was living in Brooklyn, not in Manhattan anymore. I had this opportunity to have some savings. I didn't have to go to job, to work every day. I could stay in my home, pray, during the day reading and during the night prayer. And for a year and a half, I was maybe crying every night. Maybe every night I spent my prayers in weeping and crying, being so ashamed where I was, what I was doing in my life, with my soul. And I was crying of being ashamed of myself in front of this immense personality, this creator, this personality, this being that is communicating with me. So, still for some time, I was thinking that it would be great to find Orthodox girl to leave the United States, to go to Greece, because I always loved Greece very much, especially Greek islands, to go there, to have 5 or 6 or 7 children. In the meantime, I started to learn iconography. To be an iconographer, to have a nice, normal, it doesn't have to be sex bound, it just has to be a normal person, nice girl, normal, who is Orthodox Christian, and to save myself. But then very, very, very soon I have realized that this call was too strong to resist, and I have decided to go to become a monk, to go to a monastery. So I went to monastery of St. Tikhon Zadonsk, it's in Pennsylvania. I went there I was sent there by my first spiritual father. His name was Father Macari Rossello. He was Catalonian, from Mallorca. And he was member of Russian Orthodox Church. He was a Roman Catholic monk, Capuciner, how they call it, whatever. So he realizes that he misses something in Roman Catholic theology. And he realized that they are allowed in their monastery to read only Holy Fathers, their Holy Fathers, after the split, after the schism, 11th century, but they were not allowed to read before. And he was saying, why? I mean, aren't we all Christians? No matter if they are Syrians or Greeks or Egyptians or Romans, aren't we all Christians? Why I'm not allowed to read Holy Fathers from the early centuries? And his abbot told him, no, it's not for you, it's not for you. He said, but for whom is? It's not for you. And he said, okay, but then, and then after all, he said, it's only for professors or theology. He said, no, I do not accept this explanation. So he quit, he went to Paris, he took off his habit, he went to Paris, he met Russians in Orthodox Russian Church. He there get tonsured and ordained priest, and he was sent to OCA, Orthodox Church in America, and he became priest of OCA, Orthodox Church in America. And that's how we met, because in those times there was a war in Yugoslavia, and since I was freshly converted into faith, my beloved Orthodox faith, I was, for me, the most important thing was liturgy, prayer, my own personal repentance, and to be with persons, with people with the same frame of mind. Unfortunately, in Serbian Church, also St. Sal's, in Manhattan, on 30 or 40 something, I don't remember which street, unfortunately, a lot of politics, a lot of brandy, unfortunately. That's who we are. But we can be better. We have to be better. We have to be more pious. So I said, good, it's my people, I'm going to go there for Easter, for Christmas, see them, hug them, kiss them, but I cannot stay here. So I was attending OCA. It was extremely nice community. let's say about 100 to 120 of them. Everybody, Puerto Ricans, Chinese, Croatians, Greeks, Serbians, ex-Jews, ex-Protestants, ex-Roman Catholics. People who found Christ and that's it. Manhattan, big crazy house, net house, America. They were in front of decision, losing their minds, losing their life, losing their health, or to find God. And somehow, with God's help, they found it in Orthodox Church. So it was really beautiful and perfect for myself. Nobody asked me, are you Serbian, are you Albanian, are you coming from Jupiter or from Mars? No. Do you love Jesus? Do you love Him? Do you really love Him, or you're just pretending? And they said, yes, I love Him. He's the love of my life. And this is beautiful. And Fatima Kari and his cousin, brother Daniel Breno, Brazilian, they were cousins. They were living together. Daniel Breno was a iconographer. Fatima Kari was making these frames out of metal with gemstones. So they were a very, very good team. And they told me once, Aca, because my civilian name is Alexander, and in Serbian it's short Aca, A-T-S-A. They told me, Aca, would you like to go to a monastery in Pennsylvania? We did a lot of artwork there, and there is an altar table. There are icons with these metal frames, and it would be good because since you are an artist, and of course I started to do art, and Daniel Breno was my teacher. If you could go there, clean those rizas, as Russians call it, and to protect it. I said, yeah, great, it would be beautiful, because I was already thinking about monastic life. I said it would be great to spend 5 or 6 days in the monastery, for after almost 5 years in this steel and concrete of New York, to go out in nature. I went there. I was doing my job, but I was more into the everyday church services, into much deeper prayer. And I said to myself, oh, this is something that I need. Because already in New York, it was too seldom for me to go once a week. I was burning to go to the church. I was burning to go to the liturgy. In the same way, even more, I was burning to go to nightclub before, or to discotheque or something like that. And I said to myself, I'm going back to New York, and I'm going to ask for blessing to spend one more month over there to think about it. I went there, and I realized this is the only way for myself. I left the United States, went to Mount Athos, Holy Mountain, stayed there for a month, realized it's too strong call to go back to Serbia, to my land. I went to Kosovo, spent there 12 years, went through this terrible war. The bullets were falling into the yard of the monastery, hitting the buildings, hitting the bells, church bells. I faced the universal evil and the Western world, who has his own way of thinking, way of living, way of arranging the world. People from the West, they're going to take care, very good care about white whales, white bears, certain species of trees or flowers, but very often they eat people for breakfast. Not all of them, of course. I met beautiful people, ex-Roman Catholics and ex-Jews, whatever, And they were even better Orthodox Christians than we back in Serbia, because it was that for them. For us, we are kind of spoiled, you know. Oh, I'm Orthodox Christian from my youth. That's about it. But when somebody from West, because Western culture is extremely strong and culture of high quality, with a strong feeling of discipline, the responsibility, and people who is raised, somebody who is raised in this way, when they find orthodoxy, although they have a lot of problems to reset their lives, their past, but when they once go into it, they're extremely strong in it. So I went back, spent in Kosovo a monastery of High Dečani, that's how it's called, Visoki Dečani, tall Dečani, because it's extremely tall. Oh, of course, for Serbian conditions, it's tall church, but for high cathedrals, not really. And after 12 years, after altogether staying in St. Nikon Zadonski in Pennsylvania, and there altogether about 15 years, I couldn't resist this call anymore to go to wilderness, to go to Hermitage, to be alone. And there, I stayed for 5 years in great struggle with my passions, with demonic powers. I couldn't stay more than 5 years anymore because I got sick, because I'm, soft city boy. It was 1,300 altitude meters. So I went back to Montenegro, and I was very unhappy because I thought I didn't please God. But then I realized it was God's will to go back to the world and to talk to people. Although it was much more, my stay in desert was of much higher value for me than this, but I obeyed. I obeyed to the Lord, and I believe and I pray to go back again to solitude. Anyway, I went to a monastery of Ostrog, and as I said, I started to work with people. I started to give presentations all over the world, and there were certain results. And then finally, I came up with idea, not the idea, but real need to go back to Serbia, to my homeland, because I was, let's say, 30 years out of it. Unfortunately, when I say Kosovo, when I say Montenegro, unfortunately not Serbia anymore. And I said to myself, it's very bad situations, especially spiritually, in Serbia. I have to give a little bit of my power to help. If everybody does little as he can, it's going to be a paradise. So I said, okay, in front of the Lord, I'm not going to say on the last judgment, well, I could have done more, but I didn't. No, I'm going to give everything for myself. Not more than that, because it would be insane, but whatever I can. And I said to myself, I'm going back to Serbia. I didn't know where, but I knew that I want to have my monastery, that I want to be an abbot. So it sounds very proud, very conceitful, but I must say, in my defense, that from the very first day when I entered a monastic life, from my novitiate, I was reading a lot of Holy Fathers, especially early Fathers, Greek, Syrian, and Egyptian, and about real monasticism, what it really is. Because there are very strict and very concrete rules, like in everything in life. If you want to be a good football player, there are rules. If you want to be a good violin player or a physician or whatever, there are certain rules. If you go astray of them, you lose the point. You're not going to be good, or you're not going to be at all in monasticism. Unfortunately, these days, in many monasteries, we do not live proper way of monastic life. And of course, I was drinking from the clear spring from the Holy Mount Athos, Sveta Gora, which is the fortress of monasticism these days. Especially, of course, not only Mount Athos, but Mount Athos as one of the peaks. Some monasteries in the far north of Russia, in Romania, some of them in Serbia, but not really. So I said to myself, I have this strong desire one day, I don't know when God says, to dare to think that I can be a leader of a monastic brotherhood, to be a spiritual counselor for monastics. And I was pretty much pessimistic about it. I thought, it's not going to happen to me. I'm not serious enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not whatever. And I know I'm not good enough for this, but it happened. It happened. I contacted Eparchy of Valjevo and Bishop Milutin. He said, okay, I'm accepting you, but first of all, you have to finish this with Metropolis Amphilochius. I finished this, I went there, and I had received as a great blessing and as a great fear to respond to this call, to this new position, to this new mission. So I am thanking God that He gave me this opportunity to have my monastery. Although it's not mine, but I'm there an abbot. And to try to make new, fresh, strong monastery, let's say, which will consist of two parts. One part will be a spiritual center, a center for spiritual healing and help for lay people. And it's extremely beautiful, natural place. Extremely beautiful. Serbia it's really, God gave her everything. It's like a, kako se kaže amphitheater? Amphitheater, whatever. It's like surrounded with hills. There is a little river. It's extremely beautiful. And there is a very special cave, big cave, known for those speleologists, with a special species of special kinds of bats. They live inside, only there in the whole world. So it's extremely beautiful. So I plan to build there a place for spiritual recoverment for everybody who wants. Of course, there is a level that I can do it. Of course, I cannot have there 200 people, but from and on the other hand, I want to establish a monastery, which is going to be a real monastery, like let's say Mount Athos-like monastery, with walls, with an accommodation house, dormitory, with a church, which is going to be a little bit away from this valley, very, very, very close, because the hill is right next to the church. So I went to this hill, and going up there, there is kako se kaže, visera, like plateau, whatever. And there I plan to build a monastery. It is all going to be one thing. I mean, this is going to be Upper Ribnica and Lower Ribnica, because the place is called Ribnica. Riba in Serbian means fish, and this river is called Ribnica because there is a lot of fish. It means it's clear, it's clean. So this is my plan, this is my wish, this is my desire to the whole complex is pretty old, pretty in bad condition. It was not a monastery for more than 150 years, because last time when it was a monastery, it was 1837, and since in those times we were under the Turkish yoke, the Turks were extremely against Orthodox Church, especially against monks and monasteries. Finally, they killed all the monasteries at that time, and the rest of the monks dispersed. So from that year until 2011, it was a parish church, not a monastery, and it was like a picnic place for the local inhabitants. Then my predecessor, the abbot before me, he came there in 2011. He started to work there. Somehow he didn't find a common language with the local inhabitants. He left, and I came 4 months ago. And with God's help, I believe I'm not going to go anywhere else, because last 28 years since I'm a monk, wherever I was, there was a whisper in my mind: you're not going to stay here. You're going to go away. You're going to continue your search. So when I came here, there is no this voice anymore. He told me, now you came home, and I think that's a place for my repose. Well, of course, we all need a place to die, because to die, it is something very important. It's not good to die in some rush, in some crazy shuffle. How you say? Not shuffle, but how you say? Chaos, let's say, whatever. It is extremely important to prepare ourselves for dying. Actually, not for dying, but to change the world, with the world, to change it, to leave this world and to go to the better world, in case we deserve it. So I believe it's a place for me to leave my bones and to give opportunity to young novices, to young people, to give them the best conditions in terms of my power to become, we have a lot of geniuses today. We have a lot of extremely clever kids, clever young men, but we do not have saints. We have very few saints. And saints are produced in a very, very special ways, conditions of life. 99% in the monasteries. And thinking about myself as a novice and as a young monk, I remember how important this period was for me, and how bad I was feeling, and how counterproductive was this to me when those conditions were not good enough. I was losing in vain energy, which was extremely important for me to acquire Holy Spirit and to fight with my passions. So, with God's help, and with help of all the saints, I believe I'll try to make monastery with all those conditions to have, why not? It's too late for me, but why not? To have a new saint, or at least a good bishop. Because bishops come from monastic, from monastics, and it's not easy to be a good bishop. As a matter of fact, it's extremely heavy, hard, complicated. And if bishop didn't spend certain good number of years in the monastery, in the four walls of his cell, in the burning combat with himself, maybe he's not going to be prepared for this fight with spirit of this world. So I have very sublime, very high plans. Who knows what's going to happen? But I believe if we put high plans, the highest plans and goals in front of us, myself first, I'm not going to reach it, but I'm going to go towards these high goals. And hopefully, fortunately, I'm going to reach, all of us. If I say, I want to be very pleasing to the Lord, extremely pleasing I want to be to the Lord. And I will be, if I say so. If I said, oh, it's very hard, this time, this period of these years it's so hard, we are all weakened, it's not so easy to be, to have a spiritual feet, then we're going to be like this, lukewarm. So we say, no, I'm not going to be lukewarm. I'm going to be either extremely cold or extremely hot. Otherwise, God will spill me out of His mouth. So, after 6 years of my lecturing experience, of my going all over and giving lectures, I have never asked for help. But now I'm forced, and I feel somehow ashamed to ask, but I'm not asking for myself. I'm asking for my monastery. I'm asking for all those people who are going to come there to find Lord, to find salvation, to leave antidepressants, to leave sedatives, to leave drugs, to leave bad way of life, to find back their spirits, and to try to make good monks. So this is the beginning of my going all over the world. In June I go to, hopefully, it's already arranged. I will be there for 18 days from 9th to 25th of June, going from Florida to to the border of Canada, and to back for help. Of course, nobody has to be burdened with the idea of big sums. Like everybody can give a little bit, and it will be big help for me. Of course, thanks God for internet. This presentation will go all over the world, and I believe that everybody can, whoever can afford. And I can say for those who can donate through PayPal, my address is arsenie.rimnica@gmail.com, which means ARSENIJE.RIBNICA@gmail.com. So I took a lot of your time. I'm grateful for your patience. I hope I didn't make you too tired. Thank you, and God bless you.